My name is Lieutenant Colonel Zola Ferguson, and I'm in the Nevada Air National Guard, but I've served on active duty also. I have served all over the world. I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm a physician assistant, and I do a lot of health care with women. When I was deployed, I did all kinds of general health care. I had a wonderful time in the reserves. 1994 to 2001, I did my weekends, 1 weekend a month, and I did 2 weeks in the summertime, and it was wonderful. I got to travel. I went to Bolivia and Honduras and did medical missions in third world countries. Experiences that I wasn't having in my civilian job. And then 9/11 happened. I work at the VA as a physician assistant also, and I remember walking into work that day, and I didn't have my radio on. I didn't know what had happened. And when I walked in and my boss told me, said, we're under attack and you better call your unit, I knew that my life had changed. I knew that all that fun stuff was over, the fun kind of medicine. And as it happened, I got called up. I got called up again and again and again since that time. And I've served about 3 years total of active duty since 9/11. And so it was a surprise, but it also was, I feel, my duty. It was my obligation, my paying back for what I'd been given. I was in Balad, Iraq in 2005, just for the summer, which I think in any terms I can put, it's like a summer in hell. It literally was 128 degrees when I stepped off the plane. And of course you'd flown for 23 hours or something, and you step off the plane and you thought you'd stepped into somebody's oven. And they handed you a water and said, we want to see this water in your hand from now until you leave the base. And so just the shock of the environment, and then the smell, because in Balad at that time they had burn pits running all the time. I worked in the emergency room in Balad, which was at that time the main emergency room for part of the northern part of Iraq. They would actually bring the helicopters in there and they would bring all the wounded into our emergency room, and that's where I worked. And it was, I don't know the word, but shocking. Shocking the things that we saw, shocking the conditions that they would come in the helicopters. And I'm not an emergency room PA. I'm a physician assistant, but I have rarely worked in an emergency room and not in trauma. And they did prepare me for that. They did do some training before I went there, but I was not prepared for what I saw and what we did and what was asked of us in just austere conditions. I'm used to working in a hospital where you have air conditioning, running water, sanitation. And at that time, the hospital was a tent. They tried to keep it cool, but they couldn't. And they couldn't keep it cool enough to keep the CAT scanners working. So a lot of times we'd have to do things not knowing what was in there because you couldn't CAT scan somebody. There was no running water in the hospital, believe it or not. I know, it's hard to believe. I couldn't believe it either. You're running an emergency room hospital and there was no running water. They would bring in water and you could pump a little bit, just to wash off the main stuff. And they had alcohol water. That was it. So you had to rethink, okay, then what do we do? How do we keep it as clean as possible? How do we do the best with what we have? Maybe we might run out of saline to hang drips. We might run out of medications or antibiotics or something. Although we were very, very well stocked at that particular hospital, still we'd run out of things, and the plane couldn't land because it was too hot or there was a dust storm. So we would be working with whatever we had. We not only saw the American troops, we saw third country nationals, we saw the locals, we saw the Iraqi police force and the Iraqi army injuries. We saw everything. The local people who lived around the base would bring their ill or wounded family member to the gates and say, could you please take them? They must have known that Americans will do things that other people won't do. One of the medics I was working with, was out on a mission with some other Army people, and he, the truck in front of them was Iraqi civilians, got blown up. He actually went under fire and picked up an Iraqi who had been injured where all the other people had left. Their friends had left them because they know that if they go near it that they were going to get shot too, so they left. And he actually went through, he got a medal for it too. He went through, picked up this person under fire, brought them to the hospital. What people will do under pressure. You don't know what you'll do. You don't know, you hope you'll do something, the right thing. But I saw it again and again. I saw young people doing the kind of things that just amaze me. I get to mentor the younger women coming in, and the young women now do not have the same perception of themselves as having limitations that I did when I first came in. I'm so proud of that because I know that my generation of women who came through the military paved the way, and we were the first to do this, or the first to be in combat, the first to fly fighter jets. And the young women now don't even know that they couldn't do it. It's gone away, the idea that they can't do something. And the young men too, they do not have the limitations about what women can do or what they can do that we had. And it's wonderful. It is very, very refreshing. And the young women and men who are coming in now are incredible people. I've deployed with many of them, and I feel proud of the legacy that the women who've come before them, and proud of the young people now who are willing to step into the new world.